22nd, 27th, 2022 City Council meeting, regular meeting to order. Will everyone please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Hutchings.
Here.
Ruffridge.
Here.
Nelson.
Here.
Carey.
Present.
Chilson.
Present.
Parker.
Attending by Zoom, thank you.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Now, the next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda and consent agenda. May I have a motion to approve the agenda and consent agenda? Ms. Hutchings,
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda and consent agenda.
may I have a second? Thank you, Mr. Carey. Are there any changes to the agenda or consent agenda? Mr. Chilson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would move to add laydown resolution 2022-035, requesting the State of Alaska Commissioner of Fish and Game allow the Eastside Setnet Fishery additional opportunity to harvest sockeye salmon during the 2022 season to the consent agenda as item 9B1.
Are there any objections to adding resolution 2022-035 to the agenda and consent agenda? Seeing none, resolution 2022-035 is added to the consent agenda by unanimous consent. Will the clerk please read the consent agenda?
Approval of minutes, July 13, 2022, council meeting minutes. Ordinances for introduction, ordinance 2022-023, authorizing the purchase of tract B2C, Mullen Homestead Subdivision, Soldotna Creek Park Edition, and increasing estimated revenues and appropriations by $799,000 in the general fund, introduced by the city manager, public hearing on August 24, 2022. Laydown resolution, resolution 2022-035, requesting the State of Alaska Commissioner of Fish and Game allow the Eastside Setnet Fishery additional opportunity to harvest sockeye salmon during the 2022 season, introduced by Councilmember Hutchings and Chilson. Action memorandum, 2022-017, appointing Police Chief Meek to the Kenai Peninsula Borough 911 Advisory Board, introduced by the mayor. And that is your consent agenda.
Thank you. Are there any public comments on any of those items just read by the clerk? For those participating through Zoom, please raise your hand if you would like to comment. App users by pressing the raise your hand button, and phone participants by dialing *9 on your telephone. For anyone who wishes to speak on any of those consent agenda resolutions, and that one would include resolution 2022-035 regarding set netting. This would be the opportunity to speak, and you would have 3 minutes. Please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. My name is Ken Coleman. I'm a 53-year set netter. I live in mid-California Beach, grew up here, and represent the Kenai Peninsula Fishermen's Association, which is a 501c6 advocacy organization we've taken care of and worked on set netter issues since 1954. We're here tonight to speak to, and there'll be others that speak to the proposed resolution. As you may know, the set netters have had third year in a row of closures, outright and complete closures, which is causing financial difficulties. In fact, it's a disaster in the making. We've had 2 disasters in the last 3 years, 2018, 2020, and I'm doing the calculations for 2021, and it looks like that's a disaster as well. We're asking for this to see if we can get and persuade perhaps the governor through his commissioner to allow for some additional harvest in a very controlled manner, and we're hoping that can occur. It is certainly within his legal and statutory ability as a commissioner of Fish and Game to step outside of management plans and extraordinary circumstances to allow for certain things to occur, which would then be outside the current management plans. There's a tremendous amount of sockeye resource out there. We're far ahead of sockeye goals in both the Kenai and the Kasilof than we were last year, which ended up being a very large overescapement in the Kenai River well in excess of 1 million, almost 2 million fish, all which went unharvested, all which could have been harvested and helped defray the costs, the startup costs, and provide a living for set netters. However, the management plan has a bright red line, and when certain things happen, set netters close without any consideration. It is very difficult to be in these circumstances, to have the large investments that these people do in this traditional historical fishery whose roots go all the way back to 1878. If this were Old English law, first in time, first in line, we'd be it. As it turns out, we're the last ones in line right now. And all we're asking for is some consideration, as I said, in a controlled manner, so that people can defray their costs. Perhaps their startup costs could be matched, and they could continue to work for another year. We are very aware that there are lack of king salmon. There has been in many years. We've done everything we can do as a fishery to mitigate our impact to that, including shorter nets, less time, less nets per permit. We've been taking an extraordinary position of trying to limit our numbers through a bill at the state of Alaska. You may have noticed in the last several legislators, the SB 29 legislatures, which we were taking into our own hand to try to find a way to diffuse situations, social situations, and allow us to continue this vocation that we all love so much. And so we're asking for your indulgence to help with that.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the audience wishing to speak on anything that was on the consent agenda? Excuse me. Sir, you step up here. Please state your name and address for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes.
My name is Rick Jewell. I live off Holt Lamplight in Nikiski, to be exact, on Osprey Lane. And I'm going to start off by saying that I fell in love with fishing when I caught my first trout when I was about 5 or 6 years old. But as a junior in high school, I got into commercial fishing. And I started fishing here in Cook Inlet in 1983, set netting. And I've been in and out of the fishery. Well, I sold my site in 2009, and now I'm back in the fishery with a different partner. And I just was asked by my partner to bring forth some statistics that might surprise some people, especially if you're associated with the guiding industry. You know, we think that overescapement is not so good, as there's been studies done that show that it can drive the zooplankton so deep that the smolts don't get anything to nourish themselves. But what I want to mention, according to the statistics, is that Bristol Bay has huge runs. And I read an article not long ago that talked like there was a study done that something from the volcanoes has helped these runs. I don't, first liar don't stand a chance, so how do you know what's true sometimes? But anyhow, as an example, I wanted to bring these statistics out because the Kasilof, which, my sites, we target Kenai fish, Kenai sockeye. But the Kasilof, I'm amazed when the escapement realm is 140 to 350,000, and there's over 1 million fish up that river now. And that I don't know if that lake can take it. But the thing is that the Kasilof only has 830 square miles of watershed. The Kenai has 2,000 square miles of watershed. Versus the Nushagak in Bristol Bay that has 13,500 square miles. And the Kwijak, which has 6,500 square miles. There's no comparison. These runs over in the bay are phenomenal, but their watersheds can handle the overescapement or escapement no matter what it is. And there's no comparison. So the guiding industry might say that because the runs are so huge in Bristol Bay, they're not apples and oranges. It is apples and oranges because of the watersheds are so vast over there. And I want to leave everybody with one question, and that is, do you suppose that there isn't a lot of king salmon because the sockeye smolts because of overescapement are eating the king salmon, fry, smolt, or vice versa? I think it's probably the sockeye are eating the kings because there's just so many sockeye and not that many kings. And I also want to leave you with this. I have several friends that are Kenaisi native set netters, and I don't think anybody, unless you're a Kenaisi native, wants to see something happen like happened in Washington State. And I'm referring to the Judge George Bolt decision, where the tribes wound up with half of the fish. And to present day, they actually get about 65%. But I don't think even the guiding industry would be happy if the tribes wound up with all the fish. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, sir, for your comments. Here again, please state your name and address for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Sure. My name is Amber Every, 360 Dolchuk, Kenai, Alaska. I am an Eastside set netter on North Cay Beach. I am a 30-year Kenai resident, and my husband and I are raising fourth-generation Cook Inlet commercial fishermen. We are not in a science-based biological fisheries fight. We are in a political fight. For the last 30 years, a sport fishing organization has had its #1 goal to eliminate our fishery. We've had to battle the SetNet initiative that was directed at eliminating us. We've had to fight to survive at every single Board of Fish meeting to keep a sliver of our fishery going. We have fought endlessly to have a Board of Fish meeting down here on the peninsula so board members could hear from our community. We are now fighting an administration whose top financial supporters' #1 goal is to eliminate us, and we're almost done. With a 2-day season, many businesses can no longer survive. Over 99% of our harvest is sockeye. Currently, there are over 2.8 million surplus of sockeye between the Kenai and Kasilof rivers. This battle isn't about the statistically insignificant 32 large Kenai River late run king salmon our fishery took this season. Or if it was, we'd see a closure in the dip net fishery since there was reported 50 kings last year when there was supposed to be no retention. In the last 3 years under the state's current administration, the Kasilof and Kenai rivers have seen the highest sockeye escapements ever recorded, yet the Eastside set netters are the only user group being excluded from the harvest. Don't let the commissioner fool you and tell you that he's following the management plan set forth by the Board of Fish. The management plan did not direct him to have no commercial fishing on weekends for the dip net fishery, or to not fish the North Cay Beach section on July 4th, or to close a fishery at the quarter point of the run. These were all allocative and punitive decisions he made that were not in the management plan. There is no doubt that Upper Cook Inlet is a very dynamic mixed stock fishery where trade-off decisions are made every season. This is a conversation about taking local rivers to replacement levels when there are less than 1-to-1 returns for sockeye while meeting a biological SEG goal of king salmon. The economic impact of these management plans and policies are felt not only by the business owners in the room tonight, but also to the local and state economies. The economic loss to last year's SetNet closure was $60 to $80 million. This closure will be even more. The real plan in place is how they can financially ruin our 130-year-old fishery that is home to over 440 Alaskan family businesses who are 85% Alaskan residents and 80% Kenai Peninsula Borough residents. Thank you for the time tonight to hear from our fishermen and for supporting Resolution 2022-35. Your support to our family businesses means more than you know. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else? Sir.
3 minutes is pretty short for me. especially
Please state your
folks-
name and address for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Mayor Whitney, members of the Soldotna City Council, appreciate the fact that you've taken on this laydown in the consent agenda. That's a pretty powerful statement. My name is Paul A. Shadura II. You may be familiar from the Shadura Road, but it's actually, there's a Shadura Lake. My grandfather came here in 1907 to be the church priest in Kenai. I am third generation. Our family were, in fact, we homesteaded, belonged in the oil industry. I wear several hats in the community. I'm currently the vice chair of the Kenai Soldotna Fish and Game Advisory Committee as a commercial fishing representative. I also sit on the Cook Inlet Aquaculture Association Board as a CIRI representative. I am a KIT, or Kenai Indian Tribal member. I don't represent those people tonight. I have other hats. I'd like to get into the resolution if I could. So the resolution just asks the Commissioner of Fish and Game to use his in-season authority to allow a reasonable harvest based on the current numbers that are available to him. Current numbers available for king salmon in the Kenai River. The late run is at 6,531 on the 21st. It needs a minimum of sustainable escapement goal of 6,750 or 7,500 for 50%. At that particular rate, this will reach the sustainable escapement goal by the 28th, which is a median date that the Department of Fish and Game chooses to determine if 50% of the run has gone through. I just wanted to add that on August 3rd of 2021 and on August 1st of 2020, 2019 it was the 25th, and in 2018 was 26th. So that date moves around for the 50% date. Mind you, the department has published out a daily number sheet. It tells you exactly what their projections of if they're going to reach their goals established on the days. For the Eastside Setnet, fishery, we show a harvest, estimated harvest of 32. On-time run would show an estimated, including spawners below the sonar, at 13,646. Remember, the 13,500 is the sustainable escapement goal. And if you look further, if you look for some of the dates, if it's 2 days late, meaning that it comes on the 30th of this month, that'll be 15, their estimate in river is 15,383, which in fact would meet the optimal escapement goal. Can I have one more minute? Is that possible? I just want to read the authority that the commissioner has so you know as a regulatory body why we're asking for this laydown is appropriate.
Let's wait until everyone else has a chance.
Okay, I could come back then? Thank you. Appreciate that.
Anyone else wishing to speak on any item on the consent agenda? Sir? Please state your name and address for the record, and you'll have
My
3
name
minutes.
is Richard McGann, 54025 Kenai Spur Highway, Kenai, Alaska 99611. I'm here because if you go back in history, the return in 85, that escapement goal came from 360,000 fish in the Kenai River by the counters. In the 86 season, 9 million come back from 400,000. So why do we need 2 or 3 or 5 million fish up the river to get a return? We don't. It's detriment to all fisheries of this community. In this community, if everybody would look at their constitution, you have a right. The local people have a right to be the first one in line, not Fairbanks or Eagle River or wherever. The local people come first by the Constitution. And I think we're going to end up getting that back to where the people living here, the families that make a living and spend their money here in the wintertime, will have a chance to get that fish back. And I thank this council for taking a look at this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Shaduro, why don't you go ahead and take your minute right now?
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the indulgence. Just want to explain that under the policies from the Board of Fisheries, there's delegated authorities to the commissioner under 96-163 FB I won't go into that. I will tell you, as in everything, this is what's called a handy-dandy. It's a shortened version of the statutes and regulations that guide the Department of Fish and Game for the local area. At the end of every single management plan, whether it's the Kenai, Kasilof, the king salmon, whatever, there is a section called E. This was from a case law, a situation that required this to be put into all regulations. So it's notwithstanding other provision in this chapter, it is the intent of the board that while in most circumstances the department will adhere to the management plans in this chapter, no provision within a specific management plan is intended to limit the commissioner's use of emergency order authority under 1605-60, which is the authority, statute authority for the commissioner, to achieve established escapement goals. And that doesn't mean minimum goals. It means also the high end of the goals, because you're trying to attain maximum sustained yield. Again, establish escapement goals for the management plans as the primary management objective. For the purpose of this subsection, escapement goals, including in-river goals, biological escapement goals, sustainable escapement goals, and optimal escapement goals defined in 5AC 39.222 is the Sustainable Salmon Fisheries Policy. What you're doing is correct. It's appropriate. Again, consider the reasonable opportunity. The most set netters live in Kenai. 83% live in the Cook Inlet area. The second place where they live is in Soldotna, right here. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? Please state your name and address for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Name's Alan Ted Crookston, 53509 Vico Avenue, Kenai, Alaska. Third generation set netter, raising fourth generation set netter, fished here my whole life. I just want the board here to understand the trickle-down effects of these economics. Every year that I come up, I hire roughly 10 college-age locals that go to your schools, skated on your rinks, that live here in the community. I have 5 college kids from this community that cannot pay their college tuition this fall. They banked on a good summer job fishing this year, and they do not have the money to go to school this fall. If we had 2 fish days. First day, a third of our gear. Second day, a third of our gear. Economically speaking, that's 2/3 of one day, and they fished us when no fish were there. If we were to fish a few days, these next couple of weeks, we could still have a season, and these kids can still go to school. I'm not sitting here fat and happy. This money literally goes back into the community. We're talking tens of millions of dollars goes back into Kenai and Soldotna. And for the sake of these kids to go to school and have a summer job and continue their dreams and passions, we need to be able to go fishing. The commissioner has the authority and the right to do emergency openings and allow us to fish. He can even justifiably do it. He's kind of hiding behind the plan, but it would mean a lot for the city of Kenai to support a resolution like Kenai did saying, hey, this is important to our local economy. We're the only user group that does not get to fish. 2 user groups get to fish every day in the river. We're consistently, like Mr. Coleman said, this is 3 out of 4 years is a total disaster, and it's affecting the local economy. And so I just want to express the trickle-down effect for the deckhands and the crew that I hire. Need money to go to school, and it's there. There's fish on the beach right now. If we were to set our nets, we would not be catching any kings, and we'd be catching tens of thousands of sockeye. And that economy would trickle down. That money goes back into this economy locally. And so, again, we're asking you to support this resolution to allow the commissioner to let us fish. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Ma'am? Please state your name and address for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes.
My name is Maisie Hermanson. I live on Hermanson Drive in Coho. I am a lifelong East Side Setnetter. Dad was born in Kenai in the 20s. Grandma was Russian Aleut, born here in the 1890s. Cook Inlet salmon have always been a part of my family's life. Now I feel it all slipping away. The loss is visceral. The loss is a lifetime of work gone. The loss is generations of heritage extending back before statehood disappearing. The history of this fishery is a history of loss. First they took the kings, then the silvers, now the reds. Our season used to be measured in months, and now it is doled out in hours. It is reallocation couched as conservation. We are one of the oldest user groups in Cook Inlet. If we decimated the kings, there would have been none here when the commercial guides showed up to target them. If we decimated the kings, the early run should be strong, as we have not fished it in over 50 years. It is not pointing to other causes, but that doesn't fit the narrative. So our seasons continue to be slashed. Year after year, we are sidelined during the most abundant part of the sockeye migration. And once time is taken away, it is never given back. The history of our fishery is a history of loss. This season, the run is already passing us. Our chance for a profit is too. Most of us live here year-round, work here year-round, support our communities here year-round. That cannot be said for tourist dollars. I'm thankful the City Council cares. I would hope the Commissioner would too. And one last thing. Yesterday, a gentleman at the Kenai meeting from the sports sector testified that he wanted us closed until the large kings returned, the 80, 90 pounders we used to see in the past. In any breeding system, you protect those with desirable traits and cull those without. For years and years, the in-river fishery did the exact opposite. The large kings were removed from the system, mounted on the walls, and the little duffers were tossed back to spawn, selecting for a population of smaller fish. The fabled Kenai king was loved to death by sports, and the conservation effort has been foisted on commercial. And that's not fair. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Sir? Please state your name and address for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Okay. Mike Markham, 36625 GL Hollier Street, Soldotna. So I just wanted to have a local representation here with the council. And I do appreciate any effort or assistance you can give us in this effort. I don't have any, I'm not going to state any data or statistics other than the fact that it hurts that, I've been doing set netting for 14 years, not as long as many of these others. But when you see that they open up the limits or increase the limits and they open up the dip netters 24/7 and they won't even let us in the water. So I'm hoping you guys can just put a human face on that and just for human decency or civility to say there needs to be some justice in it. So in that regards, any assistance that you can do to support us, we would appreciate. And that's all I have to say. I thank you for your help. Bye.
Thank you for your comments. Ma'am? Please state your name and address for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Hi, good evening. My name is Sarah Frostad Hudkins, 53705 Fisherman's Road. My grandfather came to Alaska in the 1820s, and I'm a third-generation commercial fisherman. I'm also a Knight tribal member. I am proud to currently fish alongside my third and fourth generation fishermen, my kids and my grandkids that are headed to bed. I've been witnessing this political battle for most of my life, and while it's changed and intensified, it's still here. My fellow fishermen have shared some data and the impacts on our community, so I don't want to be too repetitive. But I want to remind you all that our commissioner currently has the authority to allow the East Side Set Netters harvest of the excess sockeye salmon currently swimming up our rivers. I'm a KPFA board member as well. Our board, as well as other fishermen, we've been reaching out to the commissioner. We have gotten little to no response. With any other disaster in any communities, forest fires, floods, our governor would be here. We would be getting a response. We would be getting our questions answered. How are we going to fix this problem for today or the future? We have tools in the toolbox. Mr. Coleman referred to that, and also the Board of Fisheries have asked for that. We have shorter nets. We have less nets per permit. And our family has had the opportunity only to harvest sockeye salmon for 24 hours during our season, 24 hours. I don't think any other user group in our community, any tourist, would be happy coming to the Kenai Peninsula and being told they only have 24 hours to fill their freezers, to pay their bills, and to feed our world a beautiful Kenai River sockeye salmon. I would ask that you support our fishery, you support our East Side Set Netters, you support our community, our economy, and you support this resolution. So thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else wishing to speak on any item on the consent agenda?
Mr. Mayor?
One more chance. Anybody wanting to speak on anything on the consent agenda, which includes the resolution?
Mr. Mayor? I didn't get a chance to comment on this when I moved to add it to our consent agenda. Would it be permissible to make a statement on this now?
Speak up.
I didn't get a chance to comment on this when I moved to add it to the consent agenda. Would it be permissible to make a comment or a statement on this at this point?
As soon as we finish with the public comments.
Okay, thank you.
One last chance. Anyone else? Seeing none, I'll look at Zoom. Is there anyone on Zoom that wishes to comment on anything on the consent agenda? I see no hands raised. So the public comment portion of the is closed, and I will allow Mr. Chilson to make some comments, and anyone else on the council that wants to make any comment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I'd like to thank all of our SetNetters and SetNet stakeholders that came out to provide comment tonight. It's been frustrating, as we all know, to see the explosion in our local sockeye fishery and how that has not been equitably distributed. Just recently, I got the privilege to go dip net on the river, and it's phenomenal how many fish we have coming through. And I'm in a privileged position where my livelihood doesn't depend on that fish, but it's clear to see there's plenty of it to go around. And as is mentioned tonight, we're seeing expanded opportunities to partake in that fishery from every stakeholder group except for our East Side set netting community. And it's heartbreaking, honestly. You know, if you look back over the last couple of years, the restrictions that have been unfairly placed upon our set netting community have continued to tighten and has been culminating with the complete closure of this fishery. And you can't sustain a family on that. And that's one thing I keep coming back to with this is the family and the history that we have here in our community with this fishery. The economics behind in this are something that can speak to themselves. It's powerful, but I think even beyond that, just the cultural impact and the history that this fishery has in our community. One thing that I've always found touching about this is you hear about these families that have been doing this since the dawn of the fishery. There's generations of fishermen that, you know, their granddads taught their dads, and now they're out there fishing under them and learning it. And the next generation isn't going to have this opportunity to fish. And it's not because of a lack of fish, it's because of a lack of proper allocation on that. One thing that's been really interesting to hear is the justification that's supposedly been given, you know, to protect the kings, but you look at it, and one of the statistics that stands out to me is that, you know, 0.2% of the king run was bycatch from set nets. That's not where it's being caught. So, you know, I believe that Soldotna and our sister city Kenai, we're a fishing community, And that's part of our culture, and I'm proud that we're going to be able to stand by our fishermen tonight. So thank you all for coming out and equally supporting this.
Are there any other council comments on that? Mr. Carey?
Growing up here and going to Kenai Central, when we all went to Kenai Central, from Nikiski to Cooper Landing, down to Kasilof, even parts of Ninilchik, Sterling, we realized that we all had to work together, that we all were dependent upon each other for our survival. In the early 60s here, again, homesteaders could barely survive the winters if they didn't depend on each other and those around them. Our attitude has to be that no group is left out. Economically, all must be included. We must take care of all. They are all part of our family. We can't leave one family member out for the sake of the others. I'm very pleased that this is before us. I hope this council will absolutely approve it. I wish there was more we could do. I wish some way, we could scream louder and it would have an effect. But I understand we're a legislative body and we're going to pass something, I believe. And I appreciate that it's been brought before us. I appreciate everyone here and everyone in our community. We all benefit when each group is allowed their livelihood and their heritage. I was really pleased to see a former student speak again to us tonight. Thank you.
Any other comments from the council? Mr. Rufford?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll echo the comments. It's great to have folks in attendance tonight to speak on this issue. Also, growing up here, you're well aware of the importance of our fishery, and it is discouraging to hear how there is an unequitable approach to the access to that fishery. I'm very encouraged to see this on the consent agenda tonight, so thank you to Councilmember Chilson and Hutchings for bringing that forward. And I think that does speak very strongly to the intent of this body to support this set net fishery. It does leave me with a number of questions, and I hope that I can speak with many of you at some point after this meeting or in later times about why it's so easy to pick on the set netter community. I heard a little bit of that, but I feel like there's more to hear, and 3 minutes sometimes isn't long enough. So I would appreciate talking with more of you at a later date and trying to get some more information about the efforts that are being made at multiple levels and why that exists to be unfairly treating our SetNet community. So I'm happy to support this, and thank you again for bringing that forward, and thanks for being here.
Vice Mayor Parker, did you have any comments?
No, I'll save them for the end of the meeting. Thank you, Mayor Whitney.
Mr. Chilson? Ms. Hutchings?
Well, I want to say thank you for all of you for coming tonight. Commercial fishing is very personal to me. As a child, my parents had a fish site on Californsky Beach. We called it Californsky then. And I can remember when school let out on about the middle of May, we headed for the beach, and that's where we stayed for the whole summer. Admittedly, we weren't always happy with the way we were told to fish. Some days it was terrible weather, and we couldn't take the nets out, but they were always there watching to make sure. We had to deal with the canneries, with the fish traps, and, it was hard work, but it was work that was very rewarding. And I will also tell you, since my parents homesteaded in Soldotna, I went to Kenai River every day playing and whatever. Nobody was down there fishing. Nobody thought to go fishing in the Kenai River because we all had sites and we would can our fish in the summer so that we had it for the winter. And it's really sad when I look at what has happened to our fishery. And it's wrong. It's absolutely wrong. So I hope that if nothing else, we can make somebody look at something and try to change the way we handle our fisheries. Thank you again for coming.
Any other comments? Seeing none, are there any council objections to approving the agenda and consent agenda? Seeing and hearing none, the agenda and consent agenda are approved by unanimous consent. And for those of you here on the set netting resolution, that will be signed tomorrow and copies sent to the governor, Fish and Game Commissioner, and I think there was somebody else on there. But that'll be taken care of on tomorrow, and hopefully get out in the express mail. Thank you for coming, and hopefully our state government will listen to you. Moving on to the next item on the agenda. At this time, I will present a proclamation declaring Farmers Market Week to Soldotna Saturday Farmers Market managers Elaine and Bill Howell. And that proclamation is, whereas Alaska farmers and ranchers provide citizens with access to healthful, locally, and regionally produced foods through farmers markets, which are expanding and evolving to accommodate the demand for a diverse array of agricultural products. And whereas farmers market and other agricultural direct marketing outlets provide infrastructure to assist in the distribution of farm and value-added products, thereby contributing approximately $9 billion each year to the U.S. economy. And whereas farmer markets serve as a significant outlets by which small to medium, new and veteran agricultural producers market agricultural products, generating revenue that supports the sustainability of family farms and the revitalization of rural communities nationwide. And whereas the City of Soldotna recognizes the importance of expanding agricultural marketing opportunities that assist and encourage the next generation of farmers and ranchers, generate farm income to help stimulate business development and job creation, and build community connections through rural and urban linkages. And whereas farmers markets are a key source of fresh, nutritious food for everyone, including families benefiting from Women's, Infants, Children's Program, Senior Farm Market Nutrition Program, and Supplemental Nutritional Assistant Programs to incentivize buying more vegetables. And whereas farmers markets are managed by dedicated community leaders, which are driven by shared values to support local farms, feed their neighbors, and create a healthy Soldotna. Now, therefore, to further awareness of farmers market contributions to Soldotna life, I, Paul J. Whitney, Mayor of the City of Soldotna, do hereby proclaim August 7th through August 13th, 2022 as Farmers Market Week, in conjunction with the observance of the National Farmers Market Week, and I call upon Soldotna citizens to celebrate farmers markets with appropriate observance and activities. And is the Howells here? Oh. Moving on to the next item on the agenda. Presentation with prior notice. Chief Gene Meek recognizing Soldotna Police Officer Ian Koning for his life-saving efforts on June 4th, 2022. And now I'd like to introduce Chief Meek.
Good evening, folks. We're here out recognizing Officer Koenig. For public safety personnel, one of the highest honors you can receive is saving the life of another.
We can't hear you.
Oh. I did forget about the people that are out there in the virtual world. I apologize. What I was stating is one of the highest honors that could be given to a public safety professional is that of saving the life of another. And on June 4th, 2022, at 8:53 in the evening, Officer Koenig was dispatched to a local business to conduct a welfare check on a person who was passed out in a vehicle. Upon his arrival, he noticed that the person wasn't breathing. They were turning blue. Immediately engaged in CPR. Continued CPR until our medics arrived on scene. The person was transported to the hospital, revived, and later released. It was the life-saving measures by Officer Koenig that kept that person alive and with us today. And I would take this opportunity to recognize him with a commendation and present that to him before all of you today. Officer Koenig.
Move on to the next item on the agenda is public comments and presentations. Items other than those appearing on the agenda, 3 minutes per speaker and 20 minutes aggregate. Are there any members of the public who would like to speak on any item not appearing on the agenda? Please state your name and address for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Yes, my name is Thomas Barrup, and my address is Box 2763, Soldotna. Mr. Mayor, City Council members, City Manager, and new Chief Meek, appreciate your time. As a former elected Soldotna City Mayor and Soldotna Police Officer, I'd like to share my thoughts on the issue of the drag queens performing in the Soldotna Creek Park. While I am concerned about the performance in front of children in the park, I want to state that I don't hate anyone as I have been accused of. In fact, right after the last meeting, I approached a group from Pride to introduce my wife and myself in an attempt to have a dialogue with them. But it didn't turn out so well. I talked to them very quietly, very calmly, and I was really attempting to just share with them, we don't hate anybody. What I wanted to do was to try to understand. I don't agree with what happened, but I wanted to try to understand where they're coming from and why it was so important to do that type of performance publicly in a city park. Now, my wife and I came back here after being married 46 years, being married here, because we love this community, because we care. I care about everybody that's up here right now. We might have disagreed over the years on different things, but I care. I sincerely care. It's not about me having my way or getting upset and screaming and yelling. But I do have some questions. When will this issue be put on an agenda? We talked about that at the last council meeting. The council said that it needed to be further discussed. When will that happen? I'd like to be a part of that and other people. Again, not to create havoc, but simply to sit down and get some guidelines that everybody can live with. The job of the council is to listen to the community and not to take sides. Yet all the council members, it appears, pre-wrote or made up their own minds prior to that discussion last week. I hope that is not true. The job of the council is to represent the community. The community came out in force and spoke. Several members of the council spoke as if City Hall has never seen numbers like this before in a city council meeting. And then what do? It seems that it was kind of swept under the rug because I gave my location. People know how to contact me. I'd be more than happy to meet with anybody. In closing, I want to thank all of you for allowing the community to express our concerns and hope that all of the council members will consider all sides in this matter. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I forgot to mention that for those participating through Zoom, please raise your hand if you would like to comment. App users by pressing the raise your hand button, and phone participants by dialing *9 on your telephone. Next person. Please state your name and address for the record.
Isaac Colsar, 38555 Sinead Court, Soldotna. There were things brought up, and I want to be very clear about something. This is not about the LGBT community as much as they're trying to make it that way. That's cool. But I don't want you guys blinded by that because it doesn't seem like there's a lot of proactivity or anyone that has the gumption to stand up for something that is wrong. Very simply put, this is about the sexualization and obscene acts happening in public in front of our children. I don't care who it is. I don't care if it's Pentecostals for twerking. They shouldn't do it, right? Your lawyer changed the definition of a word, and that's supposed to be what you guys are supposed to make a resolution on. I sent you all that letter. It's been made public. Although all the letters that you guys released in supplemental went back
to the old meeting, so no one knew about that during the meeting. You guys say that when everybody presented here before, it was about a 50-50. One council member said that to me, and I said, well, what about all the emails? And they said, what emails? So, oh, well, apparently there's emails out there coming from people that we are neglecting to look at. It's a huge failure, and you guys need to look at what's going on in your community, listen to people, and put things into place. Other communities have done this. You guys say that it hasn't been updated for years and years, like the resolution and all that. I don't really care about the resolution. A definition could be changed. Lewd act, indecent exposure, public obscenity, something along those lines. There could be a new ordinance. I don't want to give you guys any power because I think that you guys have already proven to be incompetent with that power. And a way that you can stop and not point the finger at anybody is changing a definition and imposing that into some ordinance. Then everybody has to abide by it. It's not about LGBT or whatever. I don't care. None of that matters. You're not infringing on anyone's rights. You guys have withheld lots of information. We actually put in 4 emails and apparently 25 emails. It takes over 13 hours for people to look up into correspondences. We actually got the community together and people paid so that we could get that information. I kind of feel that's pretty bad because I've seen some emails out there of people immediately supporting the LGBT community. It's not about them, all right? So stop thinking it's about them at all, because it's not. This is about the sexualization of our children and sexual exploitation. And let's have some morals put in our community so in public places, in clear visibility, we can all live to a same standard that has some type of moral boundaries. All right. I talked to the SPD, God bless them all, and they can't do anything if I go into the park with a sock over my dong and my genitalia covered, specifically my anus, and my wife wears pasties and a thong. We can go sit in the children's park and they can do nothing. I know you have a lot of important things that you guys have to deal with, the morality of our children and the decline of that. I hope you take a close look at that, and it shouldn't take a year. It should not take a year. You guys can do things very fast when you put your mind to it. And right now, from 2 council members, one says it's going to take a year, and I think y'all are just dragging it out. And the other one says it can happen in two weeks.
Thank you, sir.
So let's make it happen.
Thank you for your comments. You can stop right now. There will be no clapping, whistling, anything like that, any demonstration. Please state your name and address for the record. and you'll
Jesse
have 3 minutes.
Colasar, 3855 Cinead Court. I'm here again concerning the Soldotna Creek Park Drag Show. At the last meeting, many council members spoke highly of the amount of public interest and the amount of community members who showed up to voice their concerns because you rarely have that involvement. But sadly, I don't believe that anybody really cared on this council about what we had to say. Every one of you had pre-written what you were going to talk about after we all spoke. The city council completely pandered to the LGB community. It was a disgrace to our cause. This is and never will be about them. Many of their members spoke about coming out of the closet, becoming a transgendered person, the hardships they have faced. None of that's relevant to the topic. All of this was a deflection and an appeal to emotion. My concerns regarding the drag show are about children being exposed to sexually explicit conduct in the city park, not their community. I don't care about their sexual preferences or their sexual ideology. I find no value in exposing children to sexual conduct, period. I want to read to you something formulated by the state of Alaska called a primer for city council members. It's a guide for how the city council members should conduct themselves in respect to their job. The city council is entrusted with upholding the public interest. It must make decisions that affect the entire community rather than any particular group. Responsibility rests with the council to decide on matters to achieve the greatest good for the greatest number of people in the community. The public interest is different from a special interest. A special interest exists when one person or a small group of people would benefit from a council action without regard for the larger interests of the community. Essentially, the public interest represents the maximum amount of benefit that flows to society at large, rather than selected groups or individual. With each decision, the council must weigh and uphold the public interest. Jordan, I've seen email responses from you to community members saying, I stand with the LGBTQ community. Do you feel you're doing your job in upholding public interests that affect the entirety of the community? I believe, according to what I just read, this would be considered a special interest that you're supporting a small group of people who benefit from a council action without regard for the full large interest of the entirety of the community. I'm still waiting for the 13 hours of city clerk time the community came together and paid for at the tune of $527 to the city of Soldotna to have all of the emails exposed that were sent to each council member and their replies. Of course, there's no attempt to expedite this. I don't buy the fact that putting this on the agenda for discussion needs to be some long, drawn-out process. I know your regular meetings are about an hour and a half. There's room for this topic. Any attempt to make it seem like it would be an arduous process is only perceived as the council's unwillingness to face the issue head-on in hopes that the community would just lose interest and the issue will just go away. We are asking the city to be transparent and actually listen, put this on the agenda, and discuss the topic. I have further concerns now seeing that the city is moving forward with an arts and culture plan funded by federal grant money. If drag queens in the park are accepted as a form of art falling under freedom of expression, what's next? Will this end? And what is your end goal in allowing this kind of behavior to take place in front of children? If this is going to lead to more sexually explicit material in public places, you guys are going to have a lot of people coming in here and outraged at this council. Next council meeting isn't until August 24th. Somebody needs to step up to the plate, submit this as an agenda item, because you guys are going to get really tired of hearing from us. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Sir?
My name is Zeke Johnston. I live at 34218 Poppywood, and I appreciate you all giving me a chance to speak tonight and participate. I was here last week, last time we all met. I would like to address the drag queen in the park, more the morality issue. I'd kind of like to repeat some of what was said over the past, since the last time I was here. I've had a lot of time to reflect on this. There are differences in kind of the belief structure when it comes to, Christians and conservatives and people more in the LGBTQ community. And I understand that. And they spoke, last time they really spoke in a big way as to, not wanting their free speech to be removed. And I mentioned last time, and I'd kind of like to repeat it again, that you haven't seen me or heard from me over the past 3 years in relation to Pride Week. I don't honk when I go by because I don't support it. But the fact is those people have a right to speak. They're Americans just like I am. Something that's a little bit concerning to me is as I've interacted with people on social media and also some of the murmurings that were in the back last time, was somebody said, morals are oppressive, is what was murmured in the back. A guy on Facebook, somebody in the gay community, I said something like, where are the morals? And he said, morals don't make me laugh. Morals don't make me laugh. I have a wife. I've got 4 kids under the age of from 8 and down, 2 boys, 2 girls. And morals are very important to me. And if we don't solidify in our community what the standard is for public morality, where's it going to lead us? That's kind of my question I'd like to leave you guys with is, where is this going to lead us? I'm not asking for suppression of anyone's free speech, but at some point, what can we do in public that is appropriate? And where's the line? Do you have principles? Do you have morals? I'm not asking, once again, I'm not asking for you to not, Jordan, I'm not asking for you to not support people and their perspective and their freedom of speech and what they want for themselves in America. That's part of the beauty of America. And we disagree and we can talk about it. But I'm just pretty disappointed that we seem to have kind of an inability to discuss this and kind of an inability to come to a general consensus on maybe we won't agree on morals, but can we at least keep our bodies covered? And one other thing is people say, oh, he was fully dressed. And he actually apologized from what I heard, and I really appreciate that. I'd like to thank him for that, for apologizing. But I would just like to say, being fully covered when you don't look like you're fully covered is a little bit of a stretch. So anyway, thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else? Please state your name and address for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes.
My name is Art Ugarte, 116 West Redoubt. I would just like for the city council to come together and work with the community. They say that when both parties walk away unhappy, it means that something worked out. If one community walks away with everything, the other one's gonna be unhappy. But if both of us can walk away and set something up, and you're saying about this new grant that they're offering, culture, expression, or whatever, that just opens up a crazy door, because then you can have a Santeria priest go and start sacrificing animals, and it can be considered something of art. There's a lot of crazy things that can happen. And us as a community, we're just upset that we're all seeming like we hate the gays or we hate everybody. It's not about that. We just want, like they say, we can't have morality. Well, you know what? We should have something in the city. We should have something where our kids can feel safe. My little boy doesn't want to go to the park anymore. And it makes me feel sad because he used to love to go to that park. So we got to do something as city council, as a community. We got to work together and stop putting what you guys believe that is right and start listening to the people who put you there. Because all of you work for us. We put you there because we decided that you were the right ones to do the job. So please do what we've asked you to do. Please come together and see what the community, what's better for us. And maybe something good can come out of this. But like I say, we all need to work together on this. It's not divided that it's against the conservatives, against the gays. It's what happened at the park. That's what we're getting to. It's the act that was done at the park. And, like he said, he could walk in with the sock covering his dong and nothing would say nothing. How far are we going to get? Is that what we really want tourists to come down and see? Many tourists love Soldotna. They love it. They love the fishing. They love this town. A lot of people come from concrete jungles, and they love coming here because they love the friendliness of our town. And that's something that makes me real proud. It makes me real proud to know that people come from the lower 48, and they all say the same thing. I don't know what it is about Anchorage, but they're rude. And they say, but we come down here to Soldotna, everyone's real nice, and it makes me feel happy. So that means that we are attracting people. People do want to come to our town. But if we're doing crazy stuff like this, we're just going to push them away. And then what are we going to have? What are we going to try to sell to people? So all I'm asking is we all work together and try to come up with something that will benefit all of us as a community. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Please state your name and address for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Yes, thank you. Adele Barrett, Box 2763. Thank you for letting us speak tonight. 2 weeks ago, we met here to express our concerns about the resolution on renting out the city park. Our concern was based on the fact that the drag queens dancing, accepting cash from underage minors in our public, family-friendly city park. We hope we can sit down and discuss this concern with the City Council and the organizers of the adult entertainment out of Anchorage to come to an agreement as to where and who can attend these events. I have thought long and hard about this critical issue. When I was a teenager here, we were allowed to go to the city dances, but with strict control. There were no underage kids there. There were no graduated students allowed. There was no alcohol. There was no drugs. There was no smoking, and there was a time limitation. We need this same oversight for adult dancing and shows in our city. No underage attendance, no alcohol or drugs, and time limitations. And no public viewing from the outside. I have an idea. I'm an event planner and a wedding coordinator. I don't agree with what they want to do, but we do have to sit at a table somewhere if this council is going to continue to support them, because that's what I felt like you guys did. But I feel like if they want to come down here from Anchorage to our community, then they should have to pay a price. They should have to rent a tent. They have to pay for it to be erected and take down. They should rent porta potties, and I think there should be bouncers at their doors to check the IDs and even have paid security. And I don't think we should have it at the city park. So I think the city could come up with some buildings you may have or somewhere, or even you guys rent the tents and you guys can make money on the tents and the porta potties. I just think it needs to be kept censored to adult audience only. The city can then make revenue from all this. But from what I saw from the last meeting that we had when we spoke to the people outside, you guys said one of you guys, I don't know if it was Dave or Justin, one of you said that they apologized. They were not apologizing to us or to you. They said that the drag queens apologized to the LGBT community for getting them in trouble about their dancing. It was not an apology for what the act was to our children. And Dave, tonight you stated that we are all family, right? No section of our community should suffer because of another section of our community, right? So that's one section of our community, and we're a section of our community. We're moral, we're decent people, tax-paying citizens. And so I think we all must work together. We should look at the safety of our children first. Each section of our community should work together, not having a closed mind to the section of your community that stands up against the sexualizing of our children. And I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for your
And
comments.
my number is 907-953-9233, and I want to sit on a committee and help resolve this issue in our community.
Anyone else? Sir? Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Gunnar Romance. I live at 495 Lily Drive, and I too am here to express my concerns about the drag queen show at Saldana Creek Park. I have lived in this community almost my whole life. I have a wife, a child in this community. She's 3 years old, and after hearing this event happened, it wasn't initially too terribly concerning. It was just a little shocking, but it's one of those things of, okay, it's free speech, I understand. But after hearing more details of it, especially the fact that a child was giving money to this dancer who was doing lewd acts in front of children, this was horrifying to me. And I don't know the council's opinions about this, but I would be deeply disturbed to know if anybody doesn't see the wrong in a child being subjected to sexualization like this. All I'm asking is for you guys to listen to the people of this community that you also live in. I'm guessing everyone in here has someone in their lives that has a small child. Do this for our future and do this for our children, please. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone on Zoom who wishes to speak on any item not on the agenda? I see no hands raised. We have reached the 20-minute time limit and actually exceeded it and the number of public comments, so we will move on to the next agenda item, which is number 6, Assembly and Legislative Reports. I see we have an Assembly member here. Would you like to make a report? No, sir. Okay. We won't put you on the spot then. Next item on the agenda is public hearings. We'll pause here for just a second, let everyone exit. Okay. Next item on the agenda is public hearings, testimony limited to 3 minutes per speaker. First item is Resolution 2022-027, forming a special assessment district for Whistle Hill sewer utility improvements, introduced by the city manager. May I have a motion to adopt? Ms. Hutchings.
I'll make a motion to adopt Resolution 2022-027, forming a special assessment district for Whistle Hill sewer utility improvements.
I'll
Second,
second.
please.
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Chilson. A report from the administration.
Thank you, Mayor Whitney. I'll ask Mr. Zarneski, our Director of Economic Development and Planning, to give the administrative report. I'll note also Mike Allen, our utility manager, is here. He can answer any utility-specific questions, as well as the sponsors of this SAD are here. I will note briefly before I turn it over to John that there has been a request to postpone this hearing and that it be taken up at the first September meeting, which would allow the clerk to reinitiate the same level of public outreach prior to a second hearing. That request came from the sponsors. Mr. Zarneski and I are supportive of that, but recognizing that the hearing is scheduled for tonight, I'll ask him to give the administrative report, and then we'll be happy to answer any questions at the appropriate time, if any. Thank you, sir.
Go ahead, Mr. Zarneski.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On March 31st, we received a signed petition to form the Whistle Hill SAD. That SAD includes 6 parcels. You can see all of those parcels in Exhibit A of your packet. 2 of those parcels are in commercial use, 2 are residential use, and 2 are vacant. There's no outstanding liens against any of the parcels or any of the properties within the SAD. The purpose of the SAD is to extend the sewer main up Whistle Hill Loop to provide services to the Whistle Hill development and those properties along the way. This is sewer only, not water line. The total length of the sewer extension would be about 1,500 feet. It would start near the old map store on the Sterling Highway, and then would extend up Whistle Hill Loop north on Paces Avenue, and then end on John Circle. The sewer in particular is requested due to poor soil conditions in this area and past failures of septic systems. The project has not been identified in the utility 5-year capital improvement plan or in the utility master plan. The total estimated cost of this project is $814,118.52. The project sponsors, the Krolls, circulated the petitions as required by code. Five of the 6 were signed and returned. This meets our code minimum requirement of 60%. The method of allocation selected by the Krolls in consultation with the city includes a split allocation method, with half being split equally among the properties and the other half being a proportional split among the properties according to the KPB assessed values. Administration is recommending a 50-50 cost share. Page 11 of the packet includes findings, and based on Resolution 2013-11, which affirms the administration's recommended 50-50 cost share split. Some benefits do result from this project. In considering those benefits relative to the overall cost of the project, however, administration does recommend a match of not more than 50%. Notice of this meeting was sent out by the clerk offering the opportunity for landowners to object to the formation of this district. Code allowed for 30 days, for a 30-day period. No objections were received. There is one issue with this project related to Soldotna Municipal Code and the fact that one parcel does not meet section 318.090 of the code. This is explained on page 10 of your packet materials. And I'll briefly go into it, and this is part of the reason for the postponement. The SAD assessment on this parcel, as it currently stands, exceeds 50% of the current assessed value of the parcel. So when this happens, code allows for a prepayment to be made to bring the levied assessment to be no more than the 50% figure. We have not dealt with this section of code historically, and it has raised a few questions in this particular circumstance. The applicants are also working through this issue and will be testifying in the public hearing and requesting a postponement to September 14th. The administration, as Ms. Queen noted, does support this request. And that is the end of my staff report.
Thank you. The public hearing is now open. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak on this item? For those participating through Zoom, please raise your hand if you would like to comment. App users by pressing the raise your hand button, and phone participants by dialing *9 on your telephone. Please state your name and address for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Henry Kroll, 36156 Tremolo Circle in Soldotna. Thank you, Mayor Whitney, Mrs. Queen, Mr. Zarneski, and council members. I can't believe everyone has left for this most highly charged discussion about sewage. It's amazing. I had hoped it wouldn't come down to this, but due to some unforeseen circumstances that Mr. Zarneski has already referred to, I have to respectfully ask for postponement. The financial burdens that this project has placed on one of the property owners have become very significant of late. And unfortunately, it's literally come down to the 11th hour. We've been working with this property owner to try to mitigate the significant financial burden that this could place upon him.
And even though he has signed the petition and expressed support, in his written petition, my wife and I don't feel it's appropriate that we continue and basically kind of force him into this. We wouldn't feel right about subjecting him to this financial burden, which has just become known to us in the last really week or so. And we asked for a little bit of time to continue working with him. This is vitally important to us and our project at Whistle Hill. And when I say vitally important, I really mean it's vitally important. If our septic system fails, we could face an immediate shutdown that would devastate our businesses, all the businesses up there, which rely on our very fragile septic system, which is our septic system in our 4 years of existence, and we are limping along currently. And coincidentally, the other affected property owner that would be affected economically with this, he pumps his septic system every other month, which is a significant financial burden to him already, and he desperately needs the sewer line extension, but at this time it would be a financial burden for him. So I respectfully ask, my wife and I respectfully ask that you consider postponing the vote on this until September, and we hope to get an alternative solution and be able to proceed with this project.
Thank you. Any questions for Dr. Kroll? Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak on this resolution, 2022-027? Seeing no one, it's back before the council. Mr. Ruffridge.
Well, I would just move to postpone Resolution 2022-027 till September 14th, please.
May I have a second? Thank you, Mr. Carey. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the roll.
Councilmember Ruffridge,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Carey,
Yes.
Chilson,
Yes.
Parker,
Yes.
Hutchings.
Yes.
You have six yes votes.
Thank you. The motion to postpone until September 14th meeting is passed on a 6-0. So moving on to the next item on the agenda. Ordinance 2022-020, authorizing the city to issue general obligation bonds in a principal amount of not to exceed $15 million to finance the construction of a field house at Soldotna Regional Sports Complex and to submit the question of issuance of such bond to the qualified voters of the city of Soldotna at the October 4th, 2022 regular city election, introduced by the city manager. May I have a motion to enact?
I'll move to enact 2022-020.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. May I have a second? Thank you, Mr. Ruffridge. Report from the administration.
Thank you, Mayor Whitney. This was the topic of extensive discussion at the recent work session that the council conducted, where we really reviewed for everyone the details of this project, which has been under development for quite some time. The field house, as you know, is a 42,000 square foot metal building that's going to accommodate potentially a wide range of users, from the more athletic to the less athletic, kind of recreational folks, providing year-round place to walk safely, play sports for adults and youth. And we presented at that work session the details of the project. There's been some work since. I think we mentioned we were working with the architectural firm to pin down in greater detail the connection of how the field house would connect physically to the sports center. There's a new conceptual drawing in the packet now of what that connection would look like, providing for a centralized entry point to either facility, as well as expanded pre-function area outside the conference rooms and additional bathrooms outside the conference rooms. That could be incorporated into this project if it moves forward. And the revised cost estimate for the project is approximately $19.5 million. Of that, we recommended at the work session, it's still our recommendation, that roughly 3/4 of the expenses be financed through debt. So the ordinance in front of the council would authorize and put on the ballot at the upcoming regular municipal election the question of authorizing the city to incur up to $15 million of general obligation debt. we would expect that the actual issuance of that debt would happen sometime in the spring, so early 2023. We've provided some estimates of what we anticipate based on today's best guesses, those interest rates might be. And we reviewed some scenarios with the council at the work session, and I believe there's an estimate included in the memo of what that repayment would be either over a 10-year or a 20-year period. But ultimately, between the Public Works Director, the Finance Director, and myself, we feel that the city is well situated to take on this debt if this is a project that the council wanted to put forward in front of the voters. The $15 million would leave a portion of the project unfunded. We are exploring everything we can think of in terms of seeking outside funding for that remainder piece or potentially more. That includes requests through our federal congressional delegation for congressionally designated spending. That includes loan programs, low interest loan programs through USDA. We will be working hard engaging with the state legislature on the upcoming state capital budget, but also recognizing potentially an opportunity to use general fund dollars from the city's general fund. And when the project was proposed 3 years ago, the council had identified $3 million from the general fund to also contribute towards that project cost. And that's a dollar amount that we would be comfortable saying is well within the range of the council to do at this time as well. We have retained a special bond counsel that would help us if this moves forward. And I think at that point, I'll wrap up my comments. Happy to answer any questions if there are from. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. The public hearing is now open. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak on this item, resolution, or excuse me, ordinance 2022-020? For those participating through Zoom, please raise your hand if you would like to comment. App users by pressing the raise your hand button, and phone participants by dialing *9 on your telephone. Is there anyone here? Would you please state your name and address for the record? And you'll have 3 minutes.
Okay, I'm Kathy Sturman, and I'm also a commercial fisherman. I've done it for 50 years. I'll just throw that out there. And I just feel like that the hurting of the people right now is not the time to bring this up, to expect the people to help fund it too. And I just really feel that we need to not bring this back up. I mean, I was the one that spent my dollars to, I am not for it at all. And I was the one, my dad and I, and 2 other people ran the campaign against it. And I just feel like it's for special interest. It's for people who run, and it's for people who do wrestling and all kinds of things you're going to do in there. It's just for special people. And the seniors are not going to benefit from this. And it's going to cost them. And I just feel like it's a waste of our money right now when we just went through COVID and all the thing that has happened to us. And I just feel like it is not the right time to be putting this burden on the people. And even though I'm probably the only one speaking, but I will fight it again. And we won by 18 votes. And I will fork out whatever it takes for me to stop this. And so I just felt like I needed to share tonight on this here, because I'm a commercial fisherman too. I've done it for 50 years, and we fish 2 days. We fish a 24-hour in the 2 days, and it has affected our family too. My kids in college, they're in college, and so this is not the time. And if you would have done it, and then we went into COVID, what a mess that would have been. And I think you guys need to consider that. We're just now getting out of the situation with COVID and the funding. And so I just do not think this is the time. And I look at the Ostrander girl. She did not have this opportunity to run in that thing, run around it, and she almost went into the Olympics. She ran outside and did what it took to run on a treadmill, whatever, for her to be able to almost go to the Olympics and climb the mountain in Seward, and she's got the top numbers. And she did not have the facility for this. And I feel like it's for special interest. It's for people that are into sports. It's not this for me, I'm not going to be using it. And our sports center right now is a mess. I mean, you guys have done some work on it, and then the wrestling guy, he opened his own wrestling place, and it's running great because that thing got voted down. So he's taking care of the wrestlers. And if we just let other families take care of the needs to run or whatever it is, the city cannot run things appropriate. The ice skating rink is not used to the maximum that it could be used for. And I just think it's a waste of money for us to be looking at this. So I am going to you know, there's a group of us, and they're not here, but there is a group of us that are going to get together, and we are going to, you know, campaign against it. I'm going to be speaking to the proper people that need to know what's happening.
Any questions from the council? Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak on ordinance 2022-020? Please state your name and address for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
My name is Nancy Eoff. I live at 627 Funny River Road. I actually didn't come to speak about this, but I strongly support you guys moving forward on this. A long time ago, when I was on city council, we were talking about this, and the group back then was so excited about what huge opportunities it offers to our community as well as the peninsula. And as a senior citizen, I'm very excited about it because I don't know what the plans look like now that you're currently working on, but there was tons of space that you could use for walking and meandering around or whatever. But anyway, you know, there's always going to be something going on to slow down forward movement, but I think it's a strong magnet for bringing the right kind of people into our community. I would probably hate to see federal funding because then we'd have to have all the little tags that go along with the federal funding, but you know, maybe we can have something else come up. But I would love to see this going forward. So much work has gone into it and so much planning and thought, and our community would be a better community. I'm excited about it. I hope it goes forward. I just hope that when it comes, if it does go to the point of being voted on, that it's so clear that people understand this is what's going to come out of my pocket to support it. You know, I don't know how that information gets out best, but I would sure love to see this move forward. And anyway, thank you.
Any questions from the council? Thank you.
Okay.
Anyone else wishing to speak on ordinance 2022-020? Anyone on Zoom? I see no hands raised on Zoom, and I see no one else here in the chamber wishing to speak on that item. The item is now back before the council. I understand there might be a motion. Mr. Carey?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to amend ordinance 2022-020, section 6, by removing the words "notice of election" and replacing them with the words "Kenai Peninsula Borough Voter Information Pamphlet," so that it reads as follows. Section 6, that the following proposition summary is hereby approved and will be included in the Kenai Peninsula Borough Voter Pamphlet. The words of the proposition summary will remain the same. I'd make that motion.
May I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Chilson. Discussion. Mr. Chilson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to thank both in attendance tonight that came out to provide comment on both sides of this issue. Just to clarify, our vote tonight is a vote to advance this if it passes, to allow the voters in the city of Soldotna to decide. We're not going to make that decision for them tonight. We're putting the decision in the people. Additionally, I did hear concern about this being a project that specifically serves one user group. And I respectfully disagree on that one. I think that there's been a lot of effort in the development of this project to make it a project that is open to all members of our community. And one of the most vocal user bases that we've had come to us throughout this process, and it's been a very long process, has been our senior community because they don't have anywhere safe to go walk in the winter. I've seen a lot of people that they're kind of forced to go either try to do tiny laps around Fed Meyer on repeat, or a lot of them will go out to the refuge and they deal with that icy road out there. And it's a danger for our seniors. And I worry about the mental health effects that we've seen just compounded with COVID, with people trapped inside and just not able to go outside and just be part of their community and get their blood moving. That's a physical thing, and it's also a mental health thing. I think it has a lot of potential benefits for everyone in our community. But at the end of the day, I do support this, but my vote to support this tonight is not to make that decision for our city. It's to allow our citizens to decide and advance it to the ballot. So thank you both for both sides.
No. Any other
I'd be
comments
happy
from
to
the
talk to you
council?
after the meeting.
Vice Mayor
Point of
Parker?
order, we have the amendment before us. Did we vote on that?
No, it's the amendment right now.
Okay.
Any other comments on the amendment? Call a roll call on the amendment.
Councilmember Hutchings,
Yes.
Ruffridge,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Carey,
Yes.
Chilson,
Yes.
Parker.
Yes.
You have 6 yes votes.
Okay, the amendment passes on a 6-0 vote. Back to the main motion. Any other discussion on the main motion? Seeing none, we'll call for the roll.
Councilmember Nelson,
Yes.
Carey,
Yes.
Chilson,
Yes.
Parker,
Yes.
Hutchings,
Yes.
Ruffridge.
Yes.
You have 6 yes votes.
Ordinance 2022-020 passes on a 6-0 vote. Moving on to the next item on the agenda is ordinance 2022-021, increasing estimated revenues and appropriations by $7,500 in the general fund for expenditures which could influence the outcome of City of Soldotna ballot proposition number 2022-A at the October 4th, 2022 regular municipal election, introduced by the city manager. May I have a motion to enact?
I'll move to enact ordinance 2022-021.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. May I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. Hutchings. Report from the administration.
Thank you, Mayor Whitney. This ordinance would appropriate funds if it was the council's intention for staff to be proactive in educating the community and/or advocating for the success of this project. The state laws require that any funds used by government employees or the entity be specifically appropriated for that purpose, and then we would track and report them to APOC. We did similar activities 3 years ago, and as a way of tracking our time, tracking expenses, and then reporting those in any of our activities that could have been viewed as influencing potentially the outcome of that election. So should the council wish to direct us to engage in those activities, appropriation of funds would be necessary and appropriate. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. The public hearing is now open. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak on this item? For those participating through Zoom, please raise your hand if you would like to comment. App users by pressing the raise your hand button, and phone participants by dialing *9 on your telephone. The public hearing on 2022-021 is open. Is there anyone here in the audience wishing to speak on this item? Seeing none, I'll look at Zoom. Is there anyone on Zoom who would like to speak on 2022-021? Seeing no hands raised there, back before the council discussion. Mr. Carey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, to the city manager. Would I be assuming correctly that in the information that we provide to the public, it will provide specific information of how much cost a property owner would be expected to pay if this passes?
Through the mayor, Councilmember Carey, unless the council determined that property tax would be the mechanism of repaying the debt, we would likely not be specifically equating it to property tax. So we would, if that decision has been made or if that decision is made at some point, then we would certainly communicate that. At this point, that decision, to my knowledge, has not been considered by the council, so we would likely refrain from making that assumption.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the council? Mr. Nelson? Oh. Vice Mayor Parker?
Thank you, Mayor Whitney. Stephanie, could you talk more about how you came up with this number? It seems a bit excessive to me. I believe in providing factual information to the voters, but $7,500 seems a bit excessive for this particular issue, particularly since there's no financial impact back to individual property owners with respect to how we would repay the bond.
Through the mayor, Councilmember Parker, sure. I believe the amount the council appropriated 3 years ago was $5,000 for these activities. In putting a number in this ordinance, we reviewed recent outreach activities the city's done. For example, during COVID, we mailed out postcards, informational postcards about some of the programs that were going on. We used that as a basis to kind of wrap our brains around what would it cost if the city did something similar, if we sent out a postcard about this project, as well as allowing for some staff time. There is a website that had previously been developed, and 3 years ago, we tracked and reported our staff time in creating that website. It would be much less staff time this time to update that webpage with the current designs, the current cost estimates. But generally, that was how we approached the request for $7,500. It would allow for staff time and potentially some tangible materials like a postcard or flyers or a mailer, one-time mailer.
Do you have a follow-up? Any other questions or comments from the council? Seeing none, we'll call for the vote.
Councilmember Carey,
No.
Chilson,
Yes.
Parker,
No.
Hutchings,
Yes.
Ruffridge,
No.
Nelson.
Yes.
You have 3 yes votes and 3 no votes.
I'll vote yes on this, as this is a number that's at the maximum, and it could be less. So, ordinance 2022-021 passes on a 4-3 vote. We'll move on to ordinance 2022-022, approving the fiscal year 2023 capital budget and increasing estimated revenues and appropriations by $1,155,000 in the general fund, $575,000 in the Soldotna Regional Sports Complex Capital Projects Fund, and $580,000 in the Small Capital Projects Fund, introduced by the city manager. May I have a motion to enact? Mr. Carey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move the adoption of ordinance 2022-022, approving the fiscal year 2023 capital budget and increasing estimated revenues as stated.
May I have a second?
Second.
Ms. Hutchings. Report from the administration.
Thank you, Mayor Whitney. This ordinance appropriate funds for FY23 capital projects. At your most recent meeting, the council adopted the 5-year capital improvement plan, and these projects mirror exactly those projects that were approved in year 1 of that 5-year planning document. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. The public hearing is now open. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak on this item? For those participating through Zoom, please raise your hand if you would like to comment. App users by pressing the raise your hand button, and phone participants by dialing *9 on your telephone. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak on ordinance 2022-022? Seeing no one here, looking at Zoom, I see no hands raised. It's back before the council. Any council comments? Seeing none, we'll call for the vote.
Councilmember Chilson,
Yes.
Parker,
Yes.
Hutchings,
Yes.
Ruffridge,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Carey.
Yes.
You have 6 yes votes.
Ordinance 2022-022 passes on a 6-0 vote. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, unfinished business, postponed items. Resolution 2022-032, officially renaming Kenai Avenue to Wright Avenue in accordance with Chapter 12.24 of the Soldotna Municipal Code, introduced by the city manager. Motion to adopt Resolution 2022-032 is on the floor from the July 13th meeting. Report from the administration.
Thank you, Mayor Whitney. I'd like to ask Mr. Zarneski to provide a report.
Thank you. And as you are aware, street renames are legislative issues. They require both a recommendation from the Planning Commission and also the decision, of course, from this body. The Planning Commission heard this item on June 1st. It is a request to rename Kenai Avenue to Wright Avenue in honor of longtime resident and former mayor Curly Wright. If you are not aware of where Kenai Avenue is, it's located right across the street here on the spur. It runs about 775 feet. There are a total of 6 parcels that have Kenai Avenue addresses, including one of them being the Superstructures building, which has several tenants. The KPB addressing officer reported that Wright Avenue would be acceptable and would actually eliminate one of several Kenai streets in the area, which they view as a good thing to eliminate any type of confusion when emergency phone calls are placed. We did receive several letters of objection, and people spoke in opposition, including Mr. Wright.
Why don't you hold on for just a second? Go ahead.
Thanks. Many of the folks who did testify spoke of the hardship that an address change would cause, and with that testimony, the Planning Commission unanimously rejected the street rename, and that is the end of the staff report.
Thank you. Public hearing is now open. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak on this item? For those participating through Zoom, please raise your hand if you would like to comment. App users by pressing the raise your hand button, and phone participants by dialing *9 on your telephone. Is there anyone here in the chamber wishing to speak? Go ahead, sir. Please state your name and address for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My name is Chuck Winters, and I live at 305 Endicott here in Soldotna. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members, and staff. I appreciate the time and opportunity to speak before you tonight. I have emailed each of you a more thorough write-up in support of this resolution, which includes my own financial commitment and my perspective on changing one word of an address. I hope you have had time to review it. I'll take my brief 3 minutes here tonight to highlight 3 points on the issue for your consideration. Number 1, why Curly Wright? Number 2, why Kenai Avenue? And number 3, why bother? When I Google the reason for a street name change to honor an individual or family, the number 1 reason is the individual must have provided extraordinary public service or some exemplary contribution to the public and is closely associated with the community where the street is located. The Wright family moved here from Anchorage in 1960. They purchased the first 2 lots in the new Farnsworth subdivision, built a house, opened a grocery store on the Spur Highway. In the 1960s, in addition to managing his grocery store and creating employment for residents of the new community, he was also opening a branch of the LDS Church, creating the new Soldotna Chamber of Commerce, and organizing the first Progress Days parades. Curly Wright also served a term as Soldotna's mayor and served 9 years on city council. One of the major accomplishments during that time was the construction of Soldotna's police department. Curly also continued to serve in all the various leadership positions of the LDS Church. Why Kenai Avenue? The answer certainly isn't because it's easy. Kenai Avenue runs from the Spur Highway and literally ends on the Wright's property. The primary reason, though, to rename Kenai Avenue to Wright Avenue is because that is the street he walked. For decades, Curly walked back and forth to work, sometimes 2 or 3 times a day, on Kenai Avenue. I would venture to say that no one in the history of Soldotna, nor its future, will have walked it as many times as Curly has. But it's not about the walk, it's about his relationship with the city. Every time he made that walk, he was walking into both Soldotna's history and its future. Those walks gave him time to reflect, time to think, time to embrace this community, which he loves dearly. And why bother? Because this is a worthwhile endeavor. I know that the City Council has to deal with many complex and controversial issues. You can certainly see that tonight. This is not one of those things. This is a feel-good opportunity that recognizes a man and a family that exemplifies Google's number 1 reason for renaming a road. Has provided extraordinary public service or some exemplary contribution to the public and is closely associated with the community. In closing, I believe Curly Wright and the Wright family are deserving of this recognition. I appreciate your time and consideration, and I hope you will do the right thing. And I want to thank you all for your service to this community. God bless you.
Any questions for Mr. Winters?
Say thank you for coming out.
Oh, you bet. Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak on Resolution 2022-032? Please state your name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes.
My name is Dennis Massey. My address is 36415 Lakeshore Drive, which is just outside city limits. But Soldotna has always been our home. We came here in 1975. My wife Barbara and I raised 10 children here. and many of which were delivered by a former mayor. And we've always called this home. We shopped at the Big K grocery when we first came here. And with each child came, it seemed like there was always a mysterious case of diapers in the back of the car when we came back outside. The Wright family is very generous. They always have been. But I want to talk about not just Curly, but that house at the end of Kenai Avenue is actually a duplex. And there's been 4 generations of Wrights that have lived in that house. They shared that home with their parents, Zell and Madge. Zell and Madge brought Curly to Alaska in 1950 to Anchorage, where they had a grocery store there for 10 years and then came down here. And Curly raised his family there. And you may know that their daughter Lisa died an untimely death in a car accident. And so Curly and Beth took those boys that were only this high then and raised them. They brought them up here every summer. And they're all college graduates contributing to their communities. And one of them is a pilot in the military. But I wanted to talk about a few things that came with the Wrights. During the '64 earthquake, most of us weren't here then. We came in '75. That grocery store was open every day to take care of the needs of the community. And there was not a single item in that store that had the price raised during that time period. He kept pre-earthquake prices through that whole period of reconstruction. And Zell traveled to Juneau with Dr. Isaac many, many years ago to petition for the hospital to be built here. The property which Madge owned. And Madge sold that property to the city so that the hospital could be built. And then they donated additional property. Madge donated additional property so they could have access to build that hospital. Many came to Zell over the years asking for money, and none or few were turned away. These are good people. I hope you find it their wisdom in renaming that street to wonderful people, a wonderful family, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any questions from the council? Saying none? Anyone else on the chambers wishing to speak on that? Please step forward and state your name and address for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
My name is Nancy Eoff, 627 Funny River Road. I moved here in 1967 as a young bride, and one of the first people that I met was Curly Wright at the Big K grocery store. I lived in a little trailer right in this spot here. There was a little trailer court, and Curly had his little store right over there. And I didn't have any family here or anything, and Curly was the most supportive person to young. There was like 3 of us couples that got married from Homer and moved up here at the same time. And Curly was so supportive of all of us. I mean, we were all having babies and growing them up. And he was just, every time he walked in the store, he was this wonderful, supportive community member. How you kids doing? Do you need help with anything? And honestly, later on, my kids are grown up and community members, et cetera. He inspired me to become part of our civic community, to get on boards and commissions and spend a little bit of time on the city council. I was so impressed by his involvement in our community and the town members that I always felt, as busy as he was, the big family he had going on and everything that was involved in his church and his kids in sports, and I was here that long ago, et cetera. I just think if he can do that with everything he has going on, I can become involved in the community. And I just think that's a wonderful legacy he's passed on. And I think he's probably touched many, many more lives, you know, that don't even know this is going on, or somebody's trying to honor him with that little I know it's not a small thing because I know things have to happen to change an address, the name of a street. But what a wonderful way to honor a man that played such a big part in our community. And I think with a lot of young people through the years that have grown up to become seniors. And anyway, I just would really like to support this. And I sure hope to see that you guys will consider it also. Anyway, thank you for your time. It's a great thing.
Any
I think.
questions from the council? Seeing none? Thank you.
Okay.
Please state your name and address for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes.
My name is Nora Farnsworth, and my address is 143 Foothill, Soldotna. And I would just like to say that my parents in 1952 developed that development, that area, and they named the streets of that subdivision after Kenai, Soldotna, and Coho as a way of having all the communities together, as we were in the 50s when everybody worked together and helped everybody. And I think that renaming it would take that away from what my parents envisioned and felt when they developed that subdivision. And so I would like to oppose the renaming of Kenai Avenue. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from the council? Seeing none? Thank you. Anyone else? Please state your name and address for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes.
All right. My name is Bridget Nelson. I live at 305 Endicott, Soldotna. I'm reading this for somebody. I would like to offer the following testimony on the Kenai Avenue name change request through this letter, inasmuch I have COVID and unable to attend tonight's meeting. It has come to my attention that Chuck Winters has submitted a request to council to change the name of Kenai Avenue in Soldotna to Wright Avenue. I wholeheartedly support this request for many of the same reasons cited by Mr. Winters, as it recognizes Curly Wright and his energy, leadership, and accomplishments towards establishing and fostering healthy business, political, and social environments in this great city. I have personally enjoyed participating with Curly in a variety of community service, church, social activities, and believe there are a significant number of other community members along with me who would take pride in seeing the right name on this sign. I believe it was Christmas in Soldotna 36 years ago that I first drove up Kenai Avenue to see the Wright home, which had won the Soldotna Chamber's Christmas Home Decorating Contest. The lighting display on his big cutouts of Alaska animals was astounding. Curly has indeed had a big impact on many lives spanning back to earlier days to now with the establishment of Big K Grocery Store and providing early leadership and momentum for the Soldotna Progress Days we just enjoyed. I find this a small thank you for his big contribution to Soldotna. Respectfully, Stan Stedman.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak on Resolution 2022-032? Seeing no one here in the chambers, I'll look at Zoom. Is there anyone on Zoom wishing to speak? I see no hands raised there. It's back before the council. Any council comments? Mr. Chilson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I kind of struggled a little bit with this one. First of all, thank you, Chuck, for getting this process going. I wasn't fully familiar with the history behind Curly coming into this, and it's been kind of inspiring to kind of see his background and contributions to our community. I think that is something that's worth honoring. I do, however, struggle, though, when we're considering a street rename that is not fully accepted by all the people that live on that street. And especially when we've had a handful of people come forward and give public comment during our last meeting with some pretty legitimate concerns as far as the impacts that would have on their business. And as a former business owner, I do empathize with that. So again, after carefully reviewing this, I don't know if I can support this. However, what I would like to see is some alternative way that we can honor the contributions that Curly has done to our community. I don't know if that would be potentially through a proclamation or maybe with future park expansions, if we could potentially identify something other than a street that we could still, honor his contribution to our city and name that after him. I don't want to see this just end here if this isn't passed. I think there's opportunity that we could still explore to honor that contribution to our community. So again, thank you.
Any other comments from the council? Mr. Ruffridge.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will say, I don't think street renaming is ever a unanimous decision. I've only been a part of that a couple of times, and it always seems to bring two sides to a story. I appreciate Mr. Winters and his testimony today, talking about the reasons why we would rename a street. And that is for an incredible contribution to our community. And so I believe I'm in support of this resolution. I don't typically try to go against planning and zoning recommendations, especially a unanimous one from planning and zoning. But I've had the opportunity to do a little of my own research and talk with community members in regards to Curly, and we're just hearing a smattering of stories and involvement from this person, and I think it would be a fitting tribute and recognition of those. Although I do agree with Mr. Chilson that should support not be found today from the council, that there would be another way forward from that as well. But I will be supporting this resolution. Thank you.
Vice Mayor Parker.
Thank you, Mayor Whitney, and thank you, Mr. Winters, for bringing this forward. I appreciate that. In my previous life, I spent a lot of time on street renaming throughout the borough, and it does take an impact on people when you change names from one name to another. And while I support the effort to identify something to honor Curly, at this time, based on the letters that we received and the vote from the Planning Commission, I can't support it, but I do appreciate what you've done, Chuck, and I think that the city of Soldotna will find a way to recognize Curly in the future.
Mr. Carey.
As a child growing up in a community, you don't normally know many of the adults, maybe your parents and maybe their real close friends, but no one else. In my life growing up here, there was one exception, and that was Curly Wright. And certainly the Big K market was a major part, and Imagine Zell, but as an athlete, Curly Wright made a point to come and support those of us at Kenai Central that were involved. And the very simple thing of bringing oranges, and it may sound like, well, that's no big deal. Yes, it is, particularly to a wrestler. Okay, someone that made sure so that after our match, we had something. Normally, you couldn't have one before, and again, it wasn't healthy. I've known Curly Wright my entire life. And each time in coming back here, whether it was after college, or again after going to the seminary, Curly was always one of the very first and strongest people to support that I was back here. He supported me as a person. He supported what he saw as my moral values and my goals. He's an outstanding human person on so many different levels. My only reluctance on this is I think it should be more than a street. I'd like to see the field house named after him. I'd like to see something much more. I'd name the hospital after him. But that's not what's before me. And so my very strong memory and experience is that Curly Wright deserves to be remembered by this city and the people here, the people who have been here, the people who are here now, and especially those who will come after. So again, those kids in the future will have something to look up in terms of what is Wright Avenue, who was Curly Wright, and I think it's very valid and it's a good thing, and I am very much in support of this.
Mr. Nelson.
Thank you. And when I say this, I don't want to get into the narrative of Curly and anything negative or positive. There's a lot of great positive things. I think he gave me a job about 20 years ago. So, I mean, obviously somebody longstanding and done a lot of things in the community. I happened to be at the P&Z meeting where this was discussed, and there was a lot of good public input and public discussion, just like we're seeing last meeting and this meeting. But I really don't see a reason to go against the P&Z's decision in this case. I think it was well thought out based on what they had. There was discussion there, I think, at the time, as we're talking about other ways to honor him, an adjacent street that maybe his house was facing, or that might have been a more appropriate thing, as that would not have businesses on it. So I think I would also echo Mr. Chilson's comments of there may be another way to do this, but I think this will be an arduous thing, for just like any street naming has been said. But I'm going to go with the recommendation of P&Z, which was unanimous, so I won't be supporting it tonight.
Last one. Ms. Hutchings.
Well, as my sister said before, my parents were very involved in this community. They had a business in Kenai, and we lived in Soldotna, and they subdivided a lot of property because their homestead was in the center of Soldotna. And we did a lot of work with fishermen in Coho because that's what we did. We spent the summers on the beach and the winters at home. And the thing is this was an inclusionary thought process for them. They were honoring Kenai, they were honoring Soldotna, and they were honoring Coho. And for people that came and homesteaded in the 1940s and put in the first subdivision in 1952, Charlie Parker was our surveyor at that time, put the first water system in that Farnsworth subdivision. Both parents sat on assembly, on city council, my mother was mayor, my mother was city council, my dad was assembly, my mom was school board, my mom was hospital board, my dad was involved with, Burton Carver and Harold Jackson to start the first hospital. I mean, all of these people were all very hardworking people to bring this community to what it is. And I guess where I have a problem with it, this was their choice. Are we going to go and change Mullins Drive later on down the road because somebody wants to change the name? It's history. It's Binkley, it's Heinrich, it's Mullins, it's Farnsworth, it's inclusion. And so, to be honest with you, I'm opposing it.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, we'll call for the vote.
Councilmember Parker?
No.
Hutchings?
No.
Ruffridge?
Yes.
Nelson?
No.
Carey?
Yes.
Chilson?
No.
You have 2 yes votes and 4 no votes.
Resolution 2022-032 fails on a 2-4 vote. Moving on to the next item on the agenda. And that will be under Other Action Memorandum 2022-016, directing the Human Resource Manager to begin advertising the vacancy, confirming a special hiring committee, and generally outline the hiring process for the Soldotna City Clerk, introduced by the mayor. May I have a motion to approve?
I'll move to approve Action Memorandum 2022-016.
Thank you, Mr. Chilson. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. My report, Vice Mayor Parker and myself met, and we have to get started on the hiring process for the city clerk. And we came to the conclusions, along with the city manager, that this would be a fair and equitable process, and change the makeup of the committee and let 2 different council members sit on it this time. If we have to go into a third process, I guess we'll get the other 2 council members on it the next time. But right now, we need to move forward on this. It's very important we get this done, and hopefully we can have it done by fall. So I would recommend approving this. So are there any council comments? Seeing none, we'll call for the vote then.
Councilmember Hutchings,
Yes.
Ruffridge,
Yes.
Nelson,
Yes.
Carey,
Yes.
Chilson,
Yes.
Parker.
Yes.
You have 6 yes votes.
The action memorandum passed on a 6-0 vote, and I'm sure Vice Mayor Parker, when she's feeling better, will start contacting that committee and start working on this. Next down is mayor and council reports, and my report is going to be hopefully fairly brief. Progress Days last Saturday. It was a good day. Wasn't quite as sunny as I wished, or the temperature wasn't high enough to dry me out after being drenched very many times in the event of throwing the softball and dunking the mayor. And I'd like to thank council members Hutchings, Nelson, and Ruffridge for putting in their time down there. I just wish one of you had been sitting in my seat and doing it for a while, but maybe next year. I'd also like to thank Michelle Gage and Jessica O'Regan and Kim McMillan and Breck Hewitt and Justin DeBill, who volunteered their time there on a weekend to work the booth. I'd like to thank Parks and Rec. I don't know who the crew was that were working there, but they made sure that everything got set up quickly and properly and made sure there was more than plenty of water in the bucket for me. But after careful consideration, we raised $123 for the food bank that day. It was originally set out for adults, $5 for 3 balls, and youngsters, $1 for 3 balls to throw at me. We didn't have very many adults, probably only 3 or 4. But we had a slew of kids, and they hit the mark just about every time. Some of them did it on their first ball and did it on their second ball, and we moved them back so they were showing where the adults were. But all in all, it was fun. It was 3 hours under there. By the end of that 3 hours, the water was feeling a little warm, so I don't know if it was warm water in the bottom of the tank or if I was just plain hypothermic. But to mention how much water fell there, the chair I was sitting in was starting to sink into the mud. I probably would have tipped over if we'd been there much longer. So next year, if we do this, we've already come to the conclusion that 1 hour will be the city manager, and 1 hour will be the public works director, Mr. Cornelis. And we were having a toss-up about either being John Zarneski from Planning and Zoning or maybe Melanie Imholt from Finance. But now that we have a new chief, he may figure in on this also. And we might be able to raise a lot more money on that one. I might even throw some balls at that one. So that's my report. Like I said, it was fun. The kids had a ball. They had an absolute ball. And that's what, in my mind, counts more than anything else. They had fun. Even the little ones that, though somebody, I won't mention any names, they would give them 3 balls, and then if they didn't hit it, they'd give them another one, and then they'd give them another one, and then they'd give them another one. I think one of them probably threw about 6 balls. But I won't mention any names on who that might have been doing that. So moving on to the next item, council reports. Soldotna Library Advisory Board. Mr. Carey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's terrible to go to the library board. It's full of people who are very angry and breaking the room up, and just the council itself, the board itself disagrees on everything. And so I state this so that no other council member should ever want to serve on the library advisory board. It is just a terrible ordeal. It is awesome, and I love it, and I so appreciate that I'm the council representative. Did you know that part of our library is a seed library for people to come in and get seeds, to learn how to grow things, and to bring seeds back? Now, you may all have known that. I wasn't aware that was part of the Soldotna, again, library. We do that, and it's very popular. Our theme for summer reading this year is Oceans of Possibilities. And again, just wonderful, all the things that are going on. The report itself provides all kinds of excellent data. We are Visitors are way up again this year as compared to the previous years. And again, circulation is at the highest it's ever been. The number of programs, the highest it's ever been. The only place where we're not at the highest ever is on program attendance. And again, we want to keep in mind that we're still dealing with the idea of COVID and people being comfortable coming back together. But again, it's just a wonderful, all the things going on. We have an excellent manager. We have had some change in personnel. And again, some very, very excellent people have been hired to take their places. And again, just on so many different levels, the reports are very good. One of the things in our reports this time, and again, which at least I hadn't seen in the past, and I kind of watch, is how much our library saves people who come in with their usage that they have, whether it's from books or DVDs or ebooks or even other. In January, we saved members of the public $168,000, $173,000 in February. In March, $214,000. Again, April was $201,000, May $191,000, and June $215,000. Our library is a wonderful resource, and it is certainly a resource for much more than only those in the city of Soldotna. It's a resource for the greater community and for young people of all different persuasions and from all different areas, as well as many people from throughout the community. Tourists love our library. It's, again, a resource that's open to them, and they certainly use it. The only thing that in any way restrictive in our policy that was decided was the electronic equipment loan policy, and they did make some restrictions so that you can't put things on hold. Instead, you've got to get what you need and then bring it back when it's supposed to be brought back. There is such a desire and a request to use the materials that we have. And again, the resources that are provided, and the Friends of the Library are always at the meeting, and they provide money, which again, we appropriate back to the library. There's just so many things that they do. And again, it's just a wonderful resource. And again, I'm just so very grateful to get to be a part of the library board. It was a tough election. It was terrible in terms of the board officers. Every board officer was reelected. It was a unanimous vote. Oh, fighting going on. It was just so difficult. And everyone should go to a library advisory board meeting. And again, it's one of those things that people that believe that this country doesn't work, they're wrong. And one of the places where democracy works, where local people have input, where things are done correctly and appropriately, and everything is upfront and open, is such things as the library board. And again, it's just a pleasure. I just greatly appreciate getting to be a part of it and to report on what's going on there. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you for your report. I wanted to get over there on progress days, but I was sitting under a bucket because there was a lot of books I wanted to buy. But I'll have to do it the next time around. So next item on the agenda is City Manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor Whitney. With the passage of the Fieldhouse, the two ordinances, we'll get started on that work. And I do understand and take to heart the council's comments about being prudent with those funds that were appropriated, as well as the importance of communicating to voters the financial impact of their decision. So to the extent that we can, we will be working to put those materials so that voters can be best educated, not just about the project, but about the potential fiscal impact of that decision. So thank you for that. This morning I met with Shannon, the chamber director, and some chamber staff out at Soldotna Creek Park. We had the pleasure of hosting Nicole McGaffey from the Levitt AMP Foundation. So she works with the Levitt AMP Foundation that funds our music in the park, and she got to pick one community that they fund to travel to this year, and she came to Soldotna, and the sun came out. And I love these meetings. We get to tell the story of our downtown. We get to tell the story of that property and the years of investment and the years of continually working towards the vision. And she was, I think, really wowed. And we were there in the morning when the vendors were starting to set up, and she'll be there. I'm sure she's there right now, getting to see it when it's full of people. So it was also a good opportunity for me to express gratitude for that foundation's investments in Soldotna, in our community, and their continued investment over many years. I was able to share with her how important, from my perspective, that has been, because it gave us an opportunity to really think through how best to make this a sustainable community event moving forward. So that was a fun meeting, and I was appreciated being invited to that. I just printed out, wanted to remind the council, if you didn't see the article on Friday in the Clarion about the economic assistance for helping with broadband and wireless costs, this program had come up at one of our previous council meetings, so I wanted to make sure to draw attention to it. This is a federal program, and if you qualify, there are several different ways that residents can qualify based on household income or different federal programs that they're eligible for. You can get $75 a month as a subsidy to help with mobile, broadband, wireless cell coverage. And the article explained that the federal government has set up a new website. It's getinternet.gov, and people can go there directly to see if they're eligible. They're asking the state of Alaska to help communicate, because there are roughly 90,000 Alaskans who are eligible, and so far less than 10 have signed up. So we don't have data about Soldotna residents who may be eligible, but I did want to at least bring this up. We'd mentioned it several months ago and wanted to make sure that people knew. We'd be happy to take phone calls. This is not our program, but we can help maybe connect people to the right websites or resources. Last thing I'll report on, there's going to be some construction-related road disruption at the beginning of next week. So Kendall, through their construction project, is going to be constructing new water and sewer tie-ins, and that's going to require a partial road closure of East Redoubt on the side across the highway. They will be working to create a detour through Devon Drive, which goes through Fred Meyers' parking lot. We also know that Fred Meyers has a contractor coming to town to be doing some construction on their portion of the road, fixing up some of the concrete and some of the potholes. These things are happening at the same time. However, they are in close coordination with each other. So the project manager for the Kendall construction is working closely with the contractors at Fred Meyers. And we will be also trying to do communication. So probably tomorrow we'll get communication out to the public so that people know that they'll just plan for maybe a little bit of either a detour or a little bit of a delay. But please just know that both of those entities are working and coordinating closely together. And I think it's good. We've gotten a lot of calls about the potholes on Devon Drive. That's an issue that Fred Meyers actually constructed that road and is responsible for upgrading it, and they're doing that work. So it's good to see that moving forward. It's going to be a little bit of a inconvenience, and I think that work starts August 2nd. So we'll be communicating about that as well as contact information if people need to follow up with someone. That concludes my report.
Any questions for the city manager? Seeing none, next item on the agenda is public comments. Members of the public will have 3 minutes to comment. And is there anyone from the public who wishes to comment? For those participating through Zoom, please raise your hand if you would like to comment. App users by pressing the raise your hand button, and phone participants by dialing *9 on your telephone. Is there anyone here in the council chambers who would like to make any public comments? Seeing none, I'll take a look at Zoom, and I see no hands raised on Zoom. So we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is council comments, and we'll start out with Vice Mayor Parker.
Thank you, Mayor Whitney. And I opted to not come to chambers tonight because I'm in the final stages of a lingering head cold and didn't want to be coughing. I have a cough that comes up periodically, so I erred on the side of caution and protection of my fellow council members and the public in attendance. I do appreciate everyone who came out tonight and expressed their opinions, from our setnetters to folks who talked about activities at Soldotna Creek Park, the sports complex, Geobond, and the renaming of Kenai Avenue to Wright Lane. So, we had a great number of people that came out and talked about a whole wide variety of issues. And I appreciate them coming out and expressing their opinions based on the rights provided to all of us by the First Amendment. And we saw that happen in spades tonight. So thank you, everybody, for sharing your thoughts. I have shared my thoughts and spoken with the city manager about a process potentially for moving forward with updating our ordinance, dealing with leasing of our public facilities. And I know that the city manager will be working on that moving forward. And I did express, I hope that we do have a working group that comes together and works with us as we move forward on updating our code after many, many years. Thank you.
Mr. Rufford.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I would like to also thank those who came out this evening for testimony. That's always good to hear from folks. Also wanted to just throw out I enjoyed Progress Days this year. I thought that was a great event that everyone was involved in. There was great turnout for the parade and for the time in the park. And then just in response to some of the comments that were heard tonight regarding the situation in the park and the actions in the park, heard tonight that there was a number of folks asking for action. And I guess I'm concerned that none of them stay till the end to hear about, from the council. But there is there's maybe a misunderstanding about how the legislative process works. And thank you, Councilmember Parker, for putting out there that there is work that's currently being talked about and worked on together within the administration and council members, working for policy change and looking at updating and looking at outdated code. So hopefully that is something that is heard and seen, and if not, certainly we can continue to talk about how it is the job of the council to listen and then to go forward diligently and take our time and do it right the first time so that we have policy that stands the test of time. That's it for my comments tonight.
Mr. Carey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to start off by just praising the city as well as, again, those who provide funding and support for it, which is all the citizens, the councils, past, present, and future, for the work done on our sidewalks and our bike lanes and our wonderful parks that we have throughout this city. They are so well used. There are so many people. I'm very involved in terms of walking now in the city, and I'm much more aware of how important they are to so many people. And again, from very early in the morning to quite late at night, and probably even later at night than I'm there. I do want to let you know that at Parker Park, the walking story, the walking book this week is This Moose Is Mine. It's a wonderful story. Again, I hope you have a chance to go by and look at the artwork, and I just so much enjoy watching the parents with their young children that they walk the 20 different stations, and it's just wonderful to watch that go on. It's just a huge asset, I believe. We speak a great deal about quality of life in our community, and I've certainly have heard it forever, for 60-some years, about what a great quality of life Soldotna represents and this community does. This afternoon, I spent an hour and a half at a celebration of life for Chuck Davis. And Chuck Davis was part of the Frontier Community Services community. And again, some would say he was severely disabled, and others would say he was empowered by a special nature. There were 70-some people there, many of those that received service, but all the service providers. I hope we appreciate the fact there are scores and scores and scores of people in our community who work to help those who maybe don't seem to have much of a voice. Again, who are striving just to stay alive, just to have that quality of life, and people that love them and their families. And again, it was very touching to be at the celebration of life at the church, and to look at the pictures and see all the people celebrating the life of this individual who had 63 years of life. And again, he was many times mentioned as the state of Alaska highest receiver of medals for Special Olympics in the state. And they said he had that record set 20 years ago, and then he continued. Again, whether it was in swimming or in the many different activities that he was involved with, and traveling to Hawaii, to Texas, to just all over the country. We are a community that provides quality of life for a lot of people. And some of those are people that maybe there aren't many that see. But again, it is awesome what goes on. And his number one place they like to go was to Fred Meyer's, in his wheelchair, to go and just be in Fred Meyer's and get to see all the people there. It was very difficult to understand Chuck in terms of his ability to speak as we might think. But boy, his celebration of life was awesome. And I hope each of us appreciate the many, many people who work. And I'm sure that many of you are part of that you work with people. And again, I just thank you and I praise you. The Frontier Community Services is wonderful, and so is Hope Services and many other groups. And it was touching to be at that service this afternoon. Thank you.
Mr. Choson.
No comments, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Nelson.
And just, yeah, I thought Progress Days was very nice. I think the weather was perfect. It wasn't too warm. Maybe you might have wanted it a little bit warmer, but I was just thinking, and I know I'm going to get in trouble for having this comment, so I think the mayor has absolutely fulfilled his duty at the dunk tank, so I think you get a pass for next year. But as our new chief of police and city manager, I mean, maybe we could just move that a little bit more central in the park so, everybody can see the opportunity. So now that I've said that, I'm going to figure out how to get out of it next year that I've thrown that out there. But it was enjoyable. I think there was some very positive comments of the gifts that the city council bought the attendees in the form of gift cards, and a few people, of course, who could not quite believe that we were giving them something for nothing. Some of them were about to stand on their head or do something to earn this, and so it was a very enjoyable day, and certainly appreciate the staff that set all that up, and you, of course, for raising that money in a difficult way. So thank you.
We might be able to put that in their employment contract. You're on that committee. Ms. Hutchings.
Well, I'm going to make it real quick for you. You've got about a half an hour left at the park. It's beautiful out. I think it's time to go.
All right. Next item on the agenda is executive session, and there is none scheduled. Meeting announcements. August 3rd, 2022, Planning and Zoning Commission meeting at 5:30 p.m. August 10th, 2022, City Council meeting 6 p.m. has been canceled. And August the 24th, 2022, City Council meeting at 6 p.m. Having nothing further on the agenda or no other business in front of us, we are adjourned.